Welcome to Barn Tech. Last night, I finished installing the 6.4 Powerstroke in my 2009 F250. I took it for a test drive that did not go as planned. I stopped at the store, and when I got back in the truck, it wouldn't start. So I'm going to gather up some tools and go up there and see if I can get it running.
Tonight we're going to film the elusive 6.4 Powerstroke in its natural habitat. There it is, just like a gazelle at the watering hole. Let's move in a little closer.
When I took my test drive last night, the truck was running pretty good, but when I came out of the store, it wouldn't start. Special thanks to Chris from O'Reilly's, who helped me to figure out what the trouble codes were. Had a trouble code for low fuel pressure, and Chris ended up staying up here with me till about 11 o'clock, so thanks a lot, Chris. So we checked the fuel pressure, and it was running about 2,500 pounds, where it should be about 22,000 pounds. Once I figured out that I had low fuel pressure, the first thing that I did was to press this Schrader valve with the key on to see if I was getting bubbles coming out. When I pressed the Schrader valve and turned the key on, there weren't bubbles coming out. So that pretty much told me that I wasn't getting combustion gases into the fuel system. So it was probably just a fuel leak somewhere. Another clue as to what was going on is the oil level was perfectly at the full line when I left the barn. And when I got here, it's probably about a gallon high. So that told me that I'm getting diesel leaking into the engine block. I'm going to go ahead and start on the passenger side, mostly because I don't want to pull the degas bottle and the fuel cooler from the driver's side if I don't have to. But before I start that, though, I want to share a thought with you. I was reading the Bible yesterday, and Isaiah said, "Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." All right, here we are with the passenger valve cover off. I'm going to try to tighten up all those injectors and tighten up the injector lines and see if maybe that's what was stopping the pressure. All right, I put my click wrench on this #1 injector and set it to 28 foot-pounds, and I got about 1/8 of a turn before it clicked. So if I'm lucky, that's going to be my problem. But while I'm in here, I'm going to go ahead and stick a wrench on each of these and make sure they're tight. Well, I didn't have any luck on the passenger side. I did find one injector that was not quite as tight as the others, but my fuel pressure is still low, so I'm going to have to dive in and pull apart the driver's side now. So I just pulled the left-hand side off. All my injectors clicked at 28 foot-pounds, so no problem there. And I took a wrench and tightened on the high-pressure fuel lines under the valve cover. Several of the high-pressure fuel lines did tighten up just a little bit here. So here I am. I've tightened up the #1 injector on the right-hand side. I've tightened up several of the high-pressure fuel lines on the left-hand side. And I'm about ready to bleed the fuel system and try it out again. So my trick for bleeding the fuel system on these is to remove this Schrader valve and it takes the same kind of Schrader valve tool that you would use for a tire valve stem. So unscrew the Schrader valve, set that aside. Now I've got a piece of fuel hose and a diesel can. I set that here, put the fuel hose onto this fitting, and just turn on the key. The way that the fuel system works, it all circulates through the fuel cooler and the high pressure side, and comes back up here to the fuel cooler again. So all I need to do is turn on the lift pump and it should bleed the air out of the system. I lifted the hose up just a little bit so that I could see the fuel going into the can here, and it didn't have bubbles in it. So I know that the fuel system is bled now. And there you have it, running under its own power. So it turns out it was the loose, it turns out I had a couple of loose fuel lines underneath the left valve cover. Tightened up those fuel lines, bled the fuel system, topped off my fluid, especially this fuel cooler, and she's running now. I'm going to get her home before she decides to stop. Well, I made it back to the barn and the truck's still running great. Actually, it's been about a week, and I did have to change the oil because it dumped about 5 quarts of diesel into the oil before I figured out what was going on. But today I've got it in the barn to charge the AC. So if you'd like to see the video on that, go ahead and click the barn button to subscribe to my channel. If you don't want to wait, you can click one of these other videos to watch something now. God bless.